Hello everyone, I'm Henry House. I'm with Perquimans Live, and we're doing candidate interviews today. I have with me John Spruill, who's running for the District 1 seat for the North Carolina House. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today and tell a little bit about myself and about the campaign and what we want to do for the 1st District. Very important work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm eager to get started in doing it after the election in November. But first we got to get past this primary, and I'm looking forward to all of that too, and we're working hard to get that done.
So pending everything goes well for you in March, for the primary, you'll have general election. Right now, the person you're running against is not being challenged on the Democratic side, correct?
Correct, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure I read the right notes before I sat down with you. So tell me about your upbringing. Where are you from? Where'd you go to school and
Sure.
things along those lines?
So I grew up in Washington County on the Mill Pond Road, Broker, North Carolina. My grandparents bought a family farm in the 1940s there, a little small place, and they grew up there or lived there doing farming. And when I was growing up, I helped my grandfather on the farm, so I learned about raising crops and the things and challenges that farmers have to go through to the input cost and the output and what you get out of it and all that kind of stuff. And when my grandfather retired, I worked for a local farmer that did about 10,000 acres.
Wow.
And so he was a very large farming operation, and I worked with him through the summertime and then through high school. And then even when I was in college, I worked with him to make some summer money, some spending money going back to college. I went to Lawrence Academy over in Bertie County through elementary, high school, and then from there, after graduation, I went to East Carolina University, where I received a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. When I got out of college, I was kind of burnt out, let's just say, on college work. So I had the opportunity to go take basic law enforcement training and pursue a career in law enforcement, but decided to go back to the farm that I worked on and worked a couple of years there, and actually went back to East Carolina and got another Bachelor of Science degree in construction management.
Okay.
And that's where I found my calling, so to speak, in my home. I have worked as a project manager and kind of worked my way up from my tool belt all the way to project management, and now a chief estimator for a site work company in Eastern North Carolina. I've done all kinds of projects in Southern Virginia and Eastern North Carolina. Probably just about every county in Eastern North Carolina I've done a project in. So I'm very familiar with all the counties and the challenges that we face in Eastern North Carolina when it comes to infrastructure type projects and funding and things of that nature.
Okay, so I know from your history you also have served as the chief of the volunteer fire department, so I imagine you spent a couple of years before you became chief. Tell me about your experiences there.
Sure. So when I was 18, 19 maybe, I don't remember exactly how old I was when I first joined the fire department, but I joined Roper Fire Department. I've been there for 33 years. And then about 4 years ago, I worked my way up through the ranks.
Right.
Captain, lieutenant, right on up to chief. And have been chief now for 4 years. And I really enjoyed being able to serve and give back to the community and being able to protect the community and responding to wrecks and fire calls. And we also do fundraisers and things that we try to bring the community together for different organized events as a community sharing thing,
right?
An outreach thing. It's been one of the most enjoyable things that I've done growing up and being involved with. And I know a lot of people get involved with different community organizations and things like that. The fire service is very demanding because when the tones drop, so to speak, in the middle of the night, you have to get up and go if somebody's in need. And that's where I have found a passion for helping people. I think through that, I see that there's a need in a lot of different areas for people that need help. And it pulls on my heartstrings. And that's why I do what I do, whether it be the fire service or serving as a county commissioner or serving in my church, and now wanting to look at serving the 6 counties that make up District 1.
Okay. Now, you said serving as a county commissioner. How long have you been on the county commissioner board?
Yeah, so I was elected, this is my first term, so I'm in just started our 4th year.
Okay.
And as serving as a county commissioner, I could see so much that good that I could do in that role. But I also could see where we were lacking in a lot of ways. Washington County is not a very big county. We don't have a lot of resources, especially when it comes to how much money or tax money can be generated by the ad valorem tax. And so a lot of times our hands are tied, so to speak, when it comes to being able to fund law enforcement adequately, or EMS, or the fire service, social services, things of that nature, the basic services that you try to give people and attract good people to our county. And in talking to other county commissioners, they're all in the same boat. They're all in the same boat in District 1. They're all having the same issues, the same problems, trying to get the correct funding. So I could see that in reaching out to our legislators, we received a little bit of help on some things, but a lot of things I just feel like we were being overlooked. And so I became a little bit frustrated with that and decided that, I wanted to do something about it. So that's why I decided to run for the North Carolina House. I want to do something about it. I have a very strong passion about jobs in Eastern North Carolina. That is my #1 passion. 4 of the 6 counties in District 1 are all losing population. You got Dare County that's gaining population, and that's obviously because you've got people retiring and moving to Dare County and living there full time at their second homes. And then you've got Currituck County that is becoming a bedroom community, so to speak. You've got people moving over from Virginia because they're looking for the better tax rate. They're in a more rural area, and the things that we love about Eastern North Carolina, they love that too, so they want to come live here. So they're moving across the state line, but they're traveling over to Virginia to work. So it's a bedroom community, and shop, and things of that nature. So those two, Currituck County, in fact, I think in the last 10 years has grown by 9,000 people, where and I think maybe 3 for Dare County. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But the rest of the counties are all losing population. And you look at like my 4 kids, they don't live in Washington County. They have to live over in Pitt County and other counties where there's more job opportunities. They're just not jobs in our counties. There used to be a few things, but mainly right now there's just farming, commercial fishing, support services for that, and then there's also service industry jobs. But we don't have anything, a major anchor for us in any of these counties, not anything that's super major, that's going to create the wages that people need to be able to pay their mortgage, be able to pay their electric bill, and buy their groceries, and then at the end of the week have a little money left over to be able to go play and have fun in Eastern North Carolina and do the things that we love doing here in Eastern North Carolina.
Well, sometimes we've been our own worst enemy because technology has advanced so much. Farming is not the way farming was when you were out helping your grandpa. Okay, so we have a lot more mechanisms out there. They're sitting in, a lot of them are sitting in air conditioned with XM radio playing over their stereo system, and GPS coordinates punched in and seeding the row or clearing the row, however the case may be. But you did touch on fishing, and fishing was a real hot button for our area this last session.
Yes.
How do we address that so we don't have to revisit that?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to be revisited. It's going to come back up. And there's just, my understanding, there's a lot of money being pumped into lobbying for the stopping of commercial fishing. The gill nets, the shrimp trawling, even you look at the marine fisheries, just recently tried to limit the amount of crabs bushels that could be brought in. And they did that arbitrarily without any kind of scientific data. They just said to themselves, and it even said it in their report that they gave out, that it seemed to be more crabs being brought in, so thus they need to limit that some. But if you look at the regulations that are already on the books for the fishing industry in North Carolina, we are the most regulated state in the entire nation when it comes to regulations on fishing. And it's absolutely ridiculous that we are so heavily regulated. And those regulations need to be cut and done away with, a lot of them. Scientifically, I totally believe if you have scientific data that is showing something that is meaningful and has been researched and agreed to by all parties, then we should act upon it in some formal way.
Okay.
But I don't know that when you arbitrarily, and they even stated in the thing that they arbitrarily came to this conclusion that they needed to limit the number of bushels being harvested for crabs. That's wrong, and we need to change that stuff.
Now, part of the issue with fisheries is water quality.
Right.
We tend to get algae bloom that dampens our waterways and then impacts the overall sound and off on the coast, because we just have die-off in our local communities, rivers and streams. And now some of that can be caused from farming, but in the last 25 years, we've made leaps and bounds strides addressing the runoffs. I come from Maryland as my former home, and we had the Chesapeake Bay, so I understand about the massive loss. And they're rebounding. When I moved here, I didn't think that we had an issue. You know, yes, we had algae blooms, and it depends on the type of summer we have as to whether the blooms get out of control or not. How would you address that? Is that one of the sources to fix the problem? That way we have a more robust fishery for both recreational and commercial fishermen.
Yes. I myself love to go recreational fishing. I'm not a commercial fisherman, but I do like to, when I go recreational fishing and I don't catch anything, I like to go to the fish market and be able to buy something. When I was growing up, I had a gentleman in the church, and he would carry me fishing, you know, and we would go, and if we didn't catch anything, he said, "John, we're gonna go pick up some fish. We're not gonna go home empty-handed." So commercial fishing is a key role for feeding Eastern North Carolina and the rest of the state too. But we would go, and somebody would say, "Well, where did you get these fish?" And he said he caught them on a silver hook. In other words, he had paid for it or whatever. So we always found that to be comical or whatever. But I do believe that we need to look at water quality. Water quality, I think, is key to the estuariums and the hatcheries that are producing ultimately the shrimp that we catch and eat, and the trout and the rockfish and all the species of fish that we love. We need to look at that comprehensively and seeing, and also comparing that data to weather-related data, data from NOAA. I mean, the salinity that's in the water, the amount of rain that we get, the amount of runoff. And I was actually speaking to our health department guru over in Washington County about this very issue and about water quality. And he said, he told me, he said, "John," He said sewer systems, septic tanks, unregulated septic tanks, and maybe even so much as water treatment plants that are maybe well past their age and need upgrading are probably dumping in a good amount of contaminants into the waterways. And then that's flowing out, and it's affecting our fisheries.
Right.
And we need to look at that stuff. And now, is that going to cost money to fix? It absolutely is. But what is the trade-off there? We let our fishing industry die. We don't have any fish or anything. So there's got to be a trade-off there where we have to invest in our future. And our future is another way we get fed, and that's through seafood. And it's an industry that generates a lot of money in commercial fishing and recreational fishing too.
In the district that you could represent, how many people are directly in the commercial fishing industry and how many are in support? Do you have an idea of those numbers?
I don't have an idea of that, but I know it is a thing that it is a topic that is a hot topic. I mean, I have talked to people on both sides. They see both sides of it. The recreational guys, a lot of them don't like to see the gill nets out there because they think it's getting all the fish and they can't catch any. That's why they're not catching anything. And then you got the commercial fishermen guys that are out there, and there's an abundance of fish. And I know you look at the flounder that's been regulated, that when I go fishing, I don't know how many flounder you end up catching. And you have to throw them back because they're regulated. You can't keep them, the season's closed and all that kind of stuff. But yet there's a shortage of flounder. You know, so I sometimes wonder where we're getting this data from. I know that they just implemented a new program where you're supposed to report how many flounder you catch, how many trout you catch, and they're trying to see where that catch is coming in so they can accurately gauge the amount of fish that are out there. To maybe better regulate it, but we're already over-regulated in my opinion. So to know what the exact number is, I don't know, but I do know there's a lot of money being lobbied in for stopping commercial fishermen inside the inner banks. Okay,
and where is that money coming from? Do you have?
I know the CCA is one big organization that is dumping a lot of money.
The CCA is?
They're, I don't know the exact name is escaping me. Coastal
Conservatory or something along those lines?
Something along those lines, but they're mainly for recreational fishermen. And they lobby for recreational fishermen and stopping the commercial fishermen inside. Right. You know, the inner bank, so to speak.
Okay.
I know they're putting a lot of money into it, and they raise a lot of money. And it makes me wonder sometimes what their ultimate objective is, because when I look at some of the stuff that they put out, it almost appeared to me that they wanted to limit recreational fishing also. So I sometimes question organizations like that because I don't know, are they really for recreational fishing, or are they for no fishing at all? And sometimes you have a wolf that's kind of in sheep's clothing sometimes. And so I'm just thinking we all need to do our research on it and make sure where the money's coming from and what their ultimate goals are.
Okay, moving back onto the dirt, our ag business.
Yes.
What is the... You know, if we get more industry brought into the community, we lose land, so to speak.
Yes.
Where is the happy balance in your mind? And how can we fortify our ag community so that they not only are not living hand to mouth, because honestly, if you go do a roadside stand and you see what the farmer's charging for an ear of corn or collards or whatever. Yeah. It does. I scratch my head. How are they making money?
Yes, and that is a very good question. I spoke to a prominent farmer just recently down that farms in Terrell County, and I said, well, tell me some of the challenges that y'all were facing. And of course, it was overwhelming the amount of input costs versus the amount of what they're getting out of it. And I also spoke to some farmers over in Perquimans County too, just recently, well, actually 2 weeks ago, actually.
Okay.
And their major complaint, they do mainly produce, and their major complaint was the H-2A things where they pay migrant labor, you know, and they set the price of that so high. Again, you've got high input cost, and what you're getting out of it is low. So an example of that, just this past fall, what farmers were getting paid for corn was the same amount of money that they were getting in the 1970s. The same dollar amount that they were getting for what they were producing.
So, and cars were selling for what, about $2,500 in the 1970s,
Yeah,
and now
right.
you're lucky you can find one for $25,000.
Right. And so the same thing with tractors. Back then they were $30,000, $40,000, and now they're $250,000. And fertilizer was $150, $200 a ton, and now it's $800 and $900 a ton. So what it's forced farmers to do is to adapt. And you were talking earlier about the advances in agriculture and things. So when I was farming, you had to actually steer a cotton picker, you know, when you're out there picking cotton. And now they can just sit back and watch and make sure everything's running. It drives itself down the road. I mean, to me, that's just a major advancement.
But that also means that there's less jobs, but we have less people who are in the fields anyway.
That's right.
Because successive generations they saw how their parents struggled and they said, that's not for me.
Right.
And then you have other ones, well, I want to do something in engineering, and those jobs don't exist locally for them to participate.
Correct.
Okay.
And then going back to how do we protect the farmers? Well, we need to work on infrastructure. One of the things that the farmer in Terrell County was talking about was to be able to get the things that they produce from X to Y in a safe way and have good transportation to get it there. And then likewise, to be able to get the fertilizer that they need to them is a key factor. And also you have a lot of companies that it appears to be monopolizing things.
Okay.
And they're, you know, controlling the money and the price point for what that input cost is. So I think that is something that we need to keep an eye on as far as, are they price gouging farmers?
Well, they have a captive audience, because if you're getting your seed from seed vendor M, and you used to be able to save some of your crop and repurpose it next year for seed. Now you can't do that for fear of being sued.
Right.
So, you know, you lose the efficiency. You also gain the lack of weeds in the field, so to speak.
Yes.
So it's a balancing act to try to do things. And I'm not sure what cost it is to us personally, but I know what cost it is to the farmer. And, you know, you can walk into a grocery store and you see, oh, you know, we're paying more for everything in the store. But I have a sneaking suspicion that what the farmer's getting out of it, by the time it goes up the supply chain and then back down to us, you know, if he's selling into a food brokerage, and that food brokerage sells into a food store, distribution warehouse, and then it comes back down to the market and it ends up being, you know, 10 miles away from where it was grown, we're paying for 5 additional hands by moving that product. So going more locally, Perquimans County, I know you travel through it quite a bit. What do you see as challenges that are unique to Perquimans County that maybe are not, that are different than what Washington County is, which you're intimately familiar with, or the other areas you're looking to represent?
Right, and that's interesting that you've put it that way, because when I reach out to leaders and people in all the counties, it's the same recurring theme. They're all basically saying, now, the budget for Washington County would be this, and the budget for Currituck County is way up here. but it's still, they all
Same
have the
issues.
same issues, the
Okay.
same problems. In fact, you look at Currituck County, they're, most of these other counties are tier 1, but they're tier 3, you know what I mean? So they don't get looked at for grants as much as the rest of these counties. Like Perquimans County just got, I don't remember the exact dollar figure, but they got a grant for building a new school.
Right.
Washington County got one. Chowan County got one. Terrell County just was awarded this year $40 or $50 million for one. But Dare County hasn't got any grants for any new schools, and neither has Currituck County. And so they got to raise their ad valorem tax if they want to build a new school. You know, they have to pay for it out of the tax dollars.
Right.
So, and some people say, well, that's fair, and then some people say, well, that's not fair. The government should be providing, you know, for our school systems and things of that.
One of the challenges, and this is a third wire discussion, or third rail discussion, is you have a lot of people, and you said earlier, who are moving into their second home. They were retired. Clearly, if they're retired, likely they don't have kids at home.
Right.
So they're paying into the tax base without any services for school being needed. So how do you justify raising the tax burden on the citizens when I mean, in my case, we don't have any kids in the school system locally.
Understand that, and that's a good question. The trade-off on that is, or the thing is, you've got people like, say, you're retired, you live down at the beach. There's people that come in that clean houses. There are people that come in that's your plumber, that's your electrician, that works on your car, service industry people.
Right.
Those service industry people have children, and they need to go to school somewhere. And if we don't educate those kids, then those kids become a burden on society ultimately, which is ultimately going to cost you more money in the end if we don't educate them properly now, when they're able to be educated a whole lot more efficiently when they're growing up, so that they can become productive members of society and be able to support themselves.
Okay. And you've mentioned several times service industries. Do you support that local schools put in programs to support the service industry? So someone who is in high school and they said, listen, a 2-year college really isn't for me either. Okay, a 4-year college, can I do something vocational?
Absolutely.
And then when I graduate, you know, maybe the person who I worked underneath will offer me a job to, you know, in the plumbing trade, in the HVAC trade, in, you know, framing, you know, car mechanics. Would you support doing, you know, trade schools or even a centralized trade program that, you know, kids from several counties around might be able to come in at a central hub that they can learn some skilled trades that they ultimately benefit our community with?
Yes, absolutely 100%. I think for far too long, we've been pushing kids, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, or you're not going to make anything of yourself.
Okay, and locally, we have some excellent colleges. I'm not saying don't go to college. It's right for a lot of people, it's not right for other people.
Correct.
But, you know, having the ability when you graduate high school to step out there and, you know, you start working under someone and you already have those skills and you can start making in our way, if they learn to weld in school, and I know it takes them across the border to go to Virginia, there's a lot of naval yards that's looking for people to work.
Correct.
That's good money.
Absolutely it is.
And that money comes back into North Carolina. If they, you know, cost of living here is incredibly reasonable for the most part. We do have little quirks, okay? But all in all, there is a benefit. You know, does that mean we put more burden on our infrastructure going up 17 to get into Virginia? Yeah, it does. Okay, are there ways to address it? certainly there's ways to address it. But the goal is for when kids are graduating high school that they want to come back here. They see that there's an opportunity for them to come back here. Or they, ultimately never leave. If they go away to go out of the community to a 4-year school, getting them back is probably, 25%.
Correct.
And
so I'll give you an example. Between my two boys, one of them went off to East Carolina and got a degree. Now, we homeschooled a lot and mixed between homeschool and public schools or whatever.
Right.
But one of them went off to East Carolina, got a degree, and then he went to Campbell and got his law degree, and now he's a practicing assistant DA in Pitt County.
Okay.
And that's what he wanted to do. But then my other son, he was like, how quick can I get out of school?
Nothing wrong with that.
And he had no desire whatsoever to go to college. None. And there's nothing wrong with that. He wanted to go to, when he was in high school, we pushed my wife and I, we pushed the school to go through not the early college program, but the trade school program at Martin Community College.
Okay.
And he got a certificate in welding. And that was his avenue. Of course, now when he graduated, he went into the Marines. Okay. And now he's getting out. And the difference that I see between my one son, who's assistant DA, he's got a huge amount of student loan payments that he's going to be paying on for a minute. And then my other son, who's getting out of the Marines, he doesn't have any student loans. And he just started a job, just got out of the Marines, and he just started a job in Plymouth that he's going to be in a journeyman program, and he's going to work his way up, and eventually he's going to be making, $30, $40 an hour, which is pretty decent money.
Yes, it is.
And so that's the two routes. I wholeheartedly believe that there's a whole generation of kids out there that we're overlooking that need to be taught in high school how to read a tape measure, how to lay a brick, how to run plumbing, how to do electrical work, and pair those kids up with a partnership sharing program with local people in the community that they can help them out on the weekends or on evenings or whatever, teach them something, and when they get out of high school, they go right into a trade underneath a journeyman and work their way up and make a decent living.
Well, a lot of the trades do make a nice, comfortable living.
Yes.
Particularly in the environment we're at. So, if I had kids who were in high school at this point, what would your advice be to them? Or if you had kids in high school at this point, what would your advice be to them on how to pursue? Find what you're happy with and do it, or keep your nose to the grindstone and work to the bone, because hard work eventually pays off.
Yeah, I'm a work, keep your nose to the grindstone kind of guy. I mean, that's just the way I was, because the American dream is out there, but you got to go chase it. I found out that nobody's going to hand you a stack of money and say, here it is, here's the American dream. You got to go make it happen for yourself. And the way to do that, and the great equalizer, is education. Now, that can mean two different things. That can mean you go early college route and you go to college, or that can mean you learn a skill and you learn how to do things with your hands and your mind, and you go into trade school. So there's two different routes you can take, but if you're not doing either one of them, then you become a burden on society. And that's what we need to head that off. We need to nip it in the bud, as Barney Fife would say. We need to work at getting our kids educated. And I don't care if you come from the coast or you come from rural North Carolina. We need to work with our kids. And another thing we need to do is we need teachers that are paid better. Every state around us pays their teachers more than we do. So what happens is you get teachers that come in, they're fresh graduates, they come in, they're good teachers, they get to know the kids or whatever, they get a little bit of experience under their belt, and then they go to Virginia making $20,000 more a year. And you can't fault someone for trying to better themselves and chasing their American dream. But we need to do better at keeping those kids here. I was talking to a young lady who's working on her doctorate degree at UNC Chapel Hill, and she's in the education field. And she said that her research showed that the more retention that you had in teachers, being able to stay within a school system and work with a set of kids as they're coming through, that the kids do better, they achieve more, their test scores go up, and the teacher ultimately succeeds better. But we've got to pay those teachers more. We got to keep them here, and we're not doing that. You look at where we're at right now, I think we're the only state in the nation that hasn't passed a budget yet. And I think built within that budget is some teacher pay.
Well, that's, we match the federal government in that regard.
Well, I guess so.
Okay. Hopefully we're not as bloated as the federal government is.
Yes. But there's an impasse in Raleigh, or impasse or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One group wants X and the other group wants Y, and neither group's going to break. But in the middle is the citizens of North Carolina. And that's the people that are suffering. You know, I look at monies that have been built into the budget that was done last year. And for at least Washington County, and I'm sure it's the same for other counties too, some critical need items, that infrastructure related things or EMS related things, or things that they were kind of counting on coming, and it's not coming. You look at the pay increases for state employees, they didn't get a pay increase. Neither did teachers. I think they did go in and pass a little mini budget that said that they could get their normal step,
right,
but not a raise. And they're not keeping up with the inflation, and thus you see you see a lot of people out there that are suffering, and they're looking at the private industry instead of staying in, you know, as a state employee providing vital services. You know, everybody wants the road solid and
right,
scraped and all that, but you know, when you can go work with a private contractor instead of running the scraper or the snowplow or whatever, you get that chasing the American dream too. You know, they want to be paid fairly. And likewise, on the flip side of that, when you're looking at the county, we're always looking at, we are mandated by law to have to pass a budget by June 30th. It has to be in place. And the state of North Carolina skirted around that a little bit a while ago. They changed it so there's a continuing resolution, and all, you know, the legislators that are up there now, well, we do have a budget. It's just one from 2 years ago. But you're working off inflation from 2 years ago, not inflation now.
right.
So it puts a burden on the counties that they're supporting. I just think we can do a better job of that, I think.
So you're successful, you win the primary, you win the general election. What committees would you seek out?
Yeah, I know farming is a big deal in our area, and also emergency services. Of course, I have a
right,
strong affinity for that. I also, in the energy sector, I think that if you look at one of the things that has been advertised a lot recently, especially in regards to the amount of energy that AI is consuming,
right,
we're going to be short energy coming up here real soon. And I think Eastern North Carolina could serve as a powerhouse for the rest of the state.
What type of energy would you be backing?
I am a backer and like nuclear energy.
Are we talking about the mini reactors?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right now, if you look at Washington County, we have one of the largest solar fields in Eastern North Carolina, and there's over 4,000 acre solar field that they're getting ready to start, which will be the biggest east of the Mississippi River. that takes up a lot of farmland. It takes up a lot of renewable resources like wood production, which Washington County is a large consumer of wood when you look at Domtar, who creates fluff paper and things of that nature, and you got Weyerhaeuser that's producing lumber for building products and things of that nature. So it is a large consumer of things of that, but you're eating up a lot of renewable resources when you're talking about taking all the trees out and taking all the farmland out. And I understand why the farmers do that, because they get offered a huge sum of money. But also tied to that, and how these solar farms can continue to do that, is they get an 80% reduction in their personal property tax. In other words, all that solar energy panels that they're putting out there, millions of dollars of equipment, they get a break on it. So the county's
getting less money
for that. And it was kind of interesting. We had, there's a deadline that you got to file by to be able to achieve that credit. And we had a solar company that didn't make the deadline. And it was going to cost them a little over $1 million in additional monies. And they wanted an exemption from it. But the ultimate thing that came out of that was, well, if we give you an exemption, then we got to give every person that asked for an exemption the same thing. So it was no fault of ours. It was your fault. You didn't file by the proper time. So no, you got to pay your tax bill. Anyway, that went along quite a ways, but they ultimately paid, and we're moving on. So that's something that we also need to look at. But I think nuclear energy, with the advancements that's been with the small package reactors, in my research, that of course there's always risk in everything you do. You look at the chemicals that are in solar that are supposedly could leach out and get into the ground and things of that nature. So you got, in everything you do, there's always going to be risk, and managing that risk and minimizing that risk is an important thing to do. But if you talk about something that consumes and produces with very little waste, is nuclear energy. And we became very worried over it some years ago.
We had 3 Mile Island,
yes.
And oddly, 3 Mile Island is coming back online for exactly the purpose of serving data centers.
Yeah, and it's something that we need to focus on, I think, in Eastern North Carolina, is to be able to provide the power that the rest of the state needs. We've already provided the food right now. We can provide the power, but we need the infrastructure to make all that happen. And that is one thing that I want to focus on when I get to Raleigh, is providing infrastructure, monies for improving our water treatment plants, our distribution system for that, our distribution and collection system for sewer and wastewater, stormwater collection, things of that nature, and roadway improvements so that we can move products to and from and through our area. It is something that we've been long overlooked for in Eastern North Carolina. One of the interesting things that I've found recently, some interesting facts, is that the Secretary of State put out her findings for, new business formations for 2025.
Okay.
Terrell County was dead last. They had 26. Then followed by Washington County. They were 96th or 94th. Then you had Perquimans and Chowan. They were all in the 90s. And then you had Currituck, I think, was 63. Don't hold me to the exact number. And I think Dare was like 37. So you had one out of the District 1 that was above the 50 percentile.
Right.
You know what the big boy was on the block, so to speak? It was Wake County at 54,000 new business formations.
Wow.
I mean, just by that alone, and in Mecklenburg and Guilford, they were followed second, third. All of those businesses are being created and grown in the center part of the state. And that's where all the major infrastructure is at.
Right.
We're not asking to be Raleigh. We're not asking to be Mecklenburg or Wake County or Mecklenburg
I
County.
hope not.
No, we don't. I don't want that. but I do want a little piece of that pie. I mean, if you look at also what the Trump administration has announced, the billions and trillions of dollars from foreign investment, and I'm not talking about adversarial like China and Iran, that type of investment here. I'm talking about friendly countries that want to invest in the United States to build products here in here. There's no reason why we can't get a little piece of that pie in Eastern North Carolina. And that's all we want, is a little piece of that pie where we can maintain what we have, grow a little bit, and have a better life here.
Would that not be also a challenge for the State Department of Commerce?
It would be, but again, I think they're focused on the center part of the state.
Well, it's easy.
We need to be a little bit of focus this way.
Well, it's an easy lift. My one son, he works for a major technology company, and they were looking to put a plant in. I said, why don't you consider this part of North Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
Land is inexpensive. He says, we don't have skilled workers.
Right.
They made that mistake. They went to a location that didn't have, and they, not everyone has to have a college degree,
Mm-hmm.
but the people who had college degrees didn't want to move there. So you had a challenge, and they have struggled, well, for 10 years trying to staff that facility. So here it would be the same thing. It's a great place to move to. We have, I would like to think we have decent schools in Perquimans County. We're moderately growing, but it's not the type, I don't want explosive growth, because I moved away from an area that was doing explosive growth. I don't want to see, driving down 17, 500 warehouses, one after another, that you can't see any farmland.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason. There's certain things that were nice living in a community of 50,000 people and having the benefits of that. And there's other things that you don't miss. And, a lot of that I don't miss. The inconvenience that I have to go out of town to pick up supplies for my business, that's an inconvenience. But it's an acceptable inconvenience because I get to live in a great community.
Right.
So you drove in here today. You saw some of the construction that we have going on in downtown Hereford.
Mm-hmm.
I jokingly said, I guess a week and a half ago at a town council meeting, that the town's doing trench warfare against us because we're replacing our sewer lines, our plumbing lines, etc. You also mentioned about sewer plants needing upgrades. Mm-hmm. Are we looking at stuff that occurs at the federal level, or stuff that's going to be occurring at the state level? How do you navigate that road? I'll dovetail onto that. One of the local fire departments needed a new fire engine. Mm-hmm. Because they're mandated to.
Yes.
Was anything wrong with the fire engine they had? Why do we mandate necessary equipment upgrades if we have equipment that is fully functional, and then putting a burden upon a local community to pay that?
Right. So and that all goes back to regulations that the federal government mandates or puts out, and then it trickles down to little communities like ours, and we have to meet the same regulations as New York City or wherever, and what it states is that your first time fire truck is supposed to be less than 5 years old, and then up to 20 years old. But then it also, there's a little caveat in there that says that if you continue to test it and it passes that test every year, then you can continue to keep that unit in service. But you always run the risk of you're on a fire scene with your flames coming out your roof, your neighbor's roof, with a 20-year-old fire truck and 20-year-old equipment, and the pump flies apart, and then you're done. So there's always a risk of that. So keeping a newer fire truck is I think essential. And you talk about funding, okay? So, an interesting story. Our congressman came to town, and he said, or he was able to get on the USDA or the Agriculture Committee in Congress, okay? And it was a town hall, and I stood up as the fire chief in Washington County for Roper Fire Department, and I said, look, I said, we're trying to go through the USDA. The USDA has a program where they will fund projects. Like, we were looking at an upgrade to our fire station. It needed renovation. You could put your hand through the metal at the bottom. It was just rusted out. And then we were trying to get a new fire truck. Now, we were trying to finance those through the USDA, which would have better financing for us. And also, they offer a grant. And because our median income was below the level,
Right.
We qualified for up to a 50% grant. But they wouldn't give us the 50%. They'd only give us $50,000 on a $600,000 fire truck or a $300 building renovation. They would only give us $50,000 for that. Well, you say only $50,000, that's a lot of money. Well, yeah, it is.
But not when you're paying
But
$600,000.
I'd rather have half of it,
Right.
300,000, you know. So I stood up, and I've always learned that if you don't ask for it, you daggone sure not going to get it. Because nobody's going to come to you with a pot of money and say, hey, I want you to go build a new fire truck or a new fire station or whatever. And I have learned, being in the fire service and as a county commissioner, you have to ask for what you want. And you have to think outside the box. So I stood up and I said, sir, I congratulate you on being added to the, or getting a committeeship for the Agriculture Committee in Congress. I said, but we need some help, and falling underneath that is the USDA. We need some help. We qualify for this, but we're not getting that. Well, they did reach back out to us the next day, which I was to my surprise. And they said, you said something about a new fire truck. Do you have the information on that? I said, I sure do. I said, I'd already had a whole package, like something you would send off and be proud of.
Right.
You know, detailed out every piece of equipment, the cost. I even built into it inflationary factors and all this kind of stuff. Sent it to them. We were awarded a congressional appropriations grant for $720,000 for
Wow.
a fire truck.
Okay.
But you got to go ask for it. You got to do the research. You got to have everything in place, and you got to know what you're asking for and who to ask for it. And that's what I'm going to do for Eastern North Carolina. I'm going to do that for each of these counties. I'm going to work with the county commissioners and the people in each county and find out what their number one need is. And I'm going to tell them, give me a list of what you need in order and a dollar figure by it, and we're going to go to Raleigh and we're going to work on it. And we're going to do it together. It's not going to be just me going to Raleigh. I'm going to be carrying everybody's voice to Raleigh and working on those agenda items that they want. And my promise, you know, a politician is not supposed to promise anything, but my promise is what I'm telling folks is that when we go to Raleigh, we're going to work on these things. And if I can't get it done because of X, Y, and Z, I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to say, we're not going to be able to get this done because of X, Y, and Z. What can we do to tweak this a little bit so we can get it done? What can we do next year so we can get it done? I know I'm not going to be able to go to Raleigh and immediately wave a magic wand and get $50 million for every county in the district or whatever project that they want. I know it's not going to happen that way. But we are going to work on it, and we are going to get things, and we're going to make it, and we're going to bring ourselves up by bootstraps with some help from outside. But we don't want, in my opinion, we don't want a handout all the time. We want to be able to support ourselves, and we want to be able to get to that point. And I think we've been overlooked for far too long in Eastern North Carolina for the type of funding that we need.
You're going to take a cowbell and ring it every time you...
In my office at work, we've got a ship bell.
Okay.
And every job that I'm successful in it, because I'm a chief estimator for our site work company. I do all 90% of our estimating. And whenever the owner or whoever, the contractor says, hey, you got this job or whatever, we ring that ship down. And so, yes, that is absolutely right. Whenever we get something, we're going to ring that bell. I promise you that.
Go ahead.
So I would like to encourage everyone to go to my website. It's spruill4nthouse.com. Sign up, learn more about me. Early voting starts February the 12th. I would really appreciate everyone's support and their vote. And then, of course, the election on March 3rd. I thank you for your time today, sir.
All right, thank you. You have a great day. I appreciate you coming out.
You too.